Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Today's episode is nearly at the halfway point of the current Grand Arena Championship 2, which we're working on. It is the semifinals because I had beat my opponent in the last round, which required almost no skill from myself, just because they forgot to deploy their defenses, and I got to play against a bunch of hodgepodge teams, and the most challenging part of that was trying to maximize my banners, but I am excited to tell you that my opponent this time did actually set their defense, and it's a pretty tough defense as well. They had a lot of things going for them in this match, and so I'm excited to show it to you guys. Looking at my opponent's stats, they had some advantages, definitely. Their relic game was way above mine in every category, basically, except for Tier 1. They had all of their Tier 2 or more on relics for every one of their characters. I had more Zetas, which is why we were matched up, I think, just because Zetas will get you those matchups against people with better sets, but they also had way better mods, and our gear was pretty close. Mine was just a little bit better. I think the most telling thing, the most big aspect to this, though, was their Bastila was faster than mine, and even though my Darth Revan is faster, having Bastila faster is probably a bigger deal, so I was not that pleased, if we're being honest. And looking at their stats, they have a bunch of defensive wins as well. Not a ton of understrength wins, and not a ton of zone wins, though, so if I figured if I could get one shot off on all of my opponents' teams, then I would have a pretty good chance of being able to win moving into it. And looking at their defenses, they were not joking around. They had Darth Revan on there up front, General Grievous, Asajj, and the Nightsisters, and then a Nute Watt team with B1 just thrown in there as a afterthought. It's going to be a pretty tough match.
Are you ready for a war?
I would have really enjoyed being able to just take out my opponent's teams right away, to be able to see what was in their back zones. That's a strategy I employ quite a bit, is being able to hit the first 4 teams so that I can plan for the back zones. But my opponent didn't really give me that luxury. Like, I needed to make sure that I was going to be able to beat their Darth Revan team first, and I needed to be able to plan out my order of attack. Having Darth Revan faster is a huge deal, though, as it turns out. So instead of doing the lightning shock like I normally do against this team, I just did fear right away on Darth Revan. Because my opponent did not have Sith Trooper in here, that meant that his entire team got fear on it. And from there, my goal here, I needed to be able to manage their Relic 7 Sith Marauder, because Sith Marauder was going to be able to one-shot any character of mine. But because he was feared, I didn't want to try doing much damage to him right away. I also had to be careful, because if my opponent had any of their health reduced to below 50%, then I would put death mark on their Revan to be able to, it was almost like a taunt. Like, I would have to hit him, and what I really wanted to do was take out their Bastila first, if I could, or if that failed, then I'd want to take out their Sith Marauder. In addition, their Malak was actually pretty squishy for being such a high relic level. My opponent had put offensive mod set on him with a crit damage triangle, so he was a little bit vulnerable. I figured my Marauder might be able to one-shot his Malak, but as you can see, I'm kind of just jumping around from character to character, trying to just hit him where he's not feared, and trying to just kind of control the situation. So faster Bastila was not a problem, 58 banners, and we can move on and actually plan the rest of our attack. The next target, of course, was going to be the Watt team with Nute in it, just so we could clear the zone and be able to see what was in the back there. Alright, so the reason I wanted to take out their Darth Revan first, and that's why it was the no-brainer, was I needed to see what other teams were going to be available. If I needed to clean up the Darth Revan team that I had started the fight with, I needed to know that, so that I could plan my other counters accordingly. And all of the counters that I have listed up here as countering these last 3 teams were going to be potentially useful to be able to finish off a Darth Revan squad. That wasn't necessary though, so I decided to go with Commander Luke against the Nute Wat team and hopefully just take out Nute or Wat right away and Alpha Strike him. If I could do that, I would also not need C-3PO. He wouldn't be of that much use in that squad in that counter. So I could put 3PO on the Padme squad to be able to counter Nightsisters better. And I just wanted that extra insurance and try to get a decent banner count. And then the other obvious counter was going to be Jedi Revan into Grievous. I didn't need Revan to be able to help counter their Malak team, so it was open game. Actually, I'm not entirely convinced that open game is even something people say, so if it's not, then I apologize. Or maybe I just coined a new phrase, but I'm probably not influential enough for that. So we have this Commander Luke team, and you always want to be looking for opportunities to undersize squads, and this was a good opportunity, I thought. I wasn't really sure. Taking 3PO off this team feels a little bit unnatural after the level I've depended on him so far. But first you want to immediately target Wat. And if you can take Wat out right away, and it's only possible now because he's a low star count, it's going to be really hard to counter him once he's gear 13 and has a lot of resilience, but right now it works to be able to just take him out right away and Alpha Strike him. If you can do that, that's going to be huge for you because the rest of the Separatists love having him around. He's not only got a lot of really great buffs for the whole team, he also has the ability to kind of revive them. Not just kind of, he does revive them. And so if I were to just like Alpha Strike Dooku at the very start, which I've done in the past, Wat will just revive him. Like, that's not a problem. Also, something to note here in this matchup, Han shoots first. Wat gets a bonus turn at the start of the round, but Han's ability always gives him precedence. Like, he is consistently going to go first against a team like this. Han is... it's pretty cool that they made that rule, that he always shoots first. It's pretty iconic, I guess, but it's also very useful. 56 banners here, though, was not really what I was expecting. I thought that I'd be able to get higher than that, even with an undersized win. But at the same time, I was able to one-shot this team, which is going to be problematic more and more as Wat continues to gain stars. The back zone was really confounding. Like, Rogue One, I haven't fought for a very long time. And Phoenix, I face every once in a while, but these Phoenix weren't very well geared at all. They didn't have any Zetas. They were clearly just left there in the hopes that Darth Revan was going to be able to just stop whoever was thrown at him. So I was glad that I was able to get through him because that zone was going to be... So in our planning session, I already noted that I was going to use Jedi Revan to counter this Grievous team, and this Grievous team is interesting only in the sense that instead of having a B1 battle droid in there, which is a really important piece of the team in my opinion, they had a probe droid in there, and to be honest, I didn't know what the probe droid was going to be trying to accomplish, and clearly he was going to cleanse something and then he was going to try to explode, but I didn't know how that changed the dynamics. And after a while of thinking about it, I just decided I was going to try this team regardless, and hopefully all my bonus protection would keep me alive, and hopefully Jolee would stay alive if he got randomly targeted by the probe droid to get exploded. Then hopefully Jolee would survive. So as you can see, the probe did manage to strip all my buffs, which is frustrating. That's actually a pretty good argument for taking probe instead of B1. And now Magna Guard is gone. But probe is actually going to be able to kill himself on his next go, just because he's got less than full health. And I think maybe I should have just targeted him and taken him out, because at least then he wouldn't have exploded. And, Grievous, regardless, is going to get a bonus turn anyways. So, As you can see, he exploded, and I don't even know who he exploded against. You couldn't really tell because I had enough bonus protection to just absorb it. I assume that it wasn't Grandmaster Yoda because he is still alive and he probably would have gotten taken out otherwise. And now that leaves just Grievous and the Droideka. And I was surprised at how fast I'd killed all these other characters on the team because usually Jedi Revan has been able to do his AoE one more time and then get another mark off, and Grievous has been kind of just hitting me a lot. I think he's only relic 5 in this case, but he's still doing a lot of damage, and we need to end this as early as we can, of course. So I just hated that I was forced to kind of just like wait with Droideka doing his huge stacks, and Jolee, I was really glad that I had gotten him up to at least relic 1. He has a huge amount of health and all of the protection and all the stuff that you get from him being relict, and he survived the Droideka's barrage. So 58 banners against a General Grievous squad that was kind of an unknown quantity is decent. I mean, it was only gear 12 except for Grievous, but on the other hand, I mean, it's hard to quibble with 58 banners. Finally, I had my Padme squad, and as I noted in the little strategy notes, I was going to take Barriss out and put 3PO in. And something I've noticed is that Spirit, when she goes first, she always targets Ahsoka for some reason. I don't know if it's just hardwired in, just the same way that Revan always targets Jedi Revan, I should say, always targets Traya against them. I don't really know, but that's always been the case as far as I can tell. I've never seen it otherwise. So some of you may be wondering why I didn't take my troopers here against them. I've beaten other pretty decent Nightsisters team with the troopers, and the reason for that was pretty simple. I outsped Spirit by 1 point after all the different speed bonuses and everything. My opponent had this squad extremely well modded. They were all really fast. Asajj actually was also only a couple speed off of my 340 speed Stark, and so I decided I would just bite the bullet and use Padme and hope that the troopers would be able to counter something in the back zone. And I mean, they already had a couple really great candidates that could counter both Rogue One and Phoenix, so it wasn't really going to be that much of a challenge. So in this match, you know, I've been not really talking about the tactics in this match, and I think at this point you guys probably understand them a lot, but I will just give a quick overview. The first part of this match is always just trying to get everyone's protection down and getting your first 2 kills, and it doesn't matter which characters you kill other than Zombie. Zombie doesn't really matter. You know, as far as your calculations for killing different characters, but once you've killed 2, you want to target old Daka first, because Daka has the revive ability, so she's able to bring back any number of Nightsisters who have been taken out. And after that, you want to take out Talzin, because her mass AoE, if it ends up killing someone, then it will bring back 1 character. So that could be Daka. Then Daka is revived and is able to then just bring back the rest of the team. So it can get messy real fast. Not usually with Relic 7 Jedi Anakin on a Padme team, but it does happen. So I was happy. I couldn't believe 58 banners is huge against Nightsisters. That means that only Ahsoka and General Kenobi were actually hurt, and the rest of the time nothing happened to the rest of my squad. So pretty fortunate. The back zone here was actually an okay mix of news. The clone team was going to be really tough to counter with my remaining teams, and then Old Republic went alongside Phoenix and Rogue One in the garbage bin. So I'm not going to show all my different counters because there was really only a couple choices to be able to take down this clone team. You want to take out the strongest team first, and the clones were by far the biggest threat, and really their biggest enemy is going to be Traya. Now, all these clones are really well geared and modded. They have a high level of relics. They're using Rex as lead, and they just have a lot going for them. They're going to be a really tricky squad to be able to unseat. And it's especially tricky because they are pretty far ahead of this Traya squad, just in terms of their overall gear level. My Traya squad they're all mostly gear 12 plus 5, but all of these guys have relics, huge levels of relics. Like they have R2 to be boosting attacks. They have Shakti, who's not the lead, but she's there to provide support, give counter, all this stuff. The one really nice thing about this particular match is that Traya just has a really good leadership against them. So every time they take an out of order turn or out of activation turn, then they take damage. They take percent health damage. And so even while they're going, like they're calling all these assists, they're doing all this stuff, their health is just dropping and dropping. And so I managed to get a fracture off on 5s and isolate on Rex. You definitely want to have isolate on Rex, just because Rex is going to get his like mini annihilate ability up, which could take out any of these Sith. I mean, you would hope that he would use it on Scion, so Scion can just respawn, but you never know. And if it happens against Nihilus, it's pretty dicey. Now you can see Nihilus is real close to death. I was really lucky there. I did manage to annihilate Rex, and then soon after Echo went. And after this, it's all over but the crying. I mean, they did take out Thrawn, which is unfortunate. This squad is absolutely a squad that I really need. I'm targeting to be able to work on Gear 13 kind of soon. I don't know if they're going to come before or after Bounty Hunters, but Traya is just too important in the current overall status of Grand Arena. They take out so many teams, they counter so many teams, and these teams that they're taking out are important enough that people are starting to put really high relic levels on them. And I think that it would kind of be foolish a little bit to not work on this squad and keep them relevant as counters, because I mean, if they aren't counters, like I lose a team essentially. I don't want to have this squad taking out B teams, because I won't even get full banners against the B teams because I have no way to regrow my protection. So 53 banners is acceptable here, just because I was real close to just losing this match outright, and I'm real glad that I managed to take the win on my first try. The remaining 3 teams are not too difficult to beat in general. I normally wouldn't want to take Imperial troopers against this Old Republic team, but the thing I realized was that my opponent had put Zaalbar on the Nute squad, which meant that this squad had T3 instead. And it was actually a fairly quick squad. It had pretty good mods. My opponent had really great mods anyways. But my troopers are really fast. I've modded them for speed specifically, except where they're modded for damage. And without some kind of strong taunt, like they were able to take out Karth right away, and then the turn meter train started, and it just got real ugly. That was one of the fastest matches I've ever had, and troopers tend to have those kind of matches. Like either they win in 1 minute or less, or they lose, and that's something I love about troopers. Other teams do that too. That's one reason I've really loved the Darth Revan meta, in fact, because all of your matches last like 30 seconds, and then you can, quit in shame, or, smirk a little and put the phone back in your pocket. It's great, as opposed to like the Jedi Revan madness that used to happen. Anyways, I'm getting off track here. I chose my Jedi Training Rey squad against this Rogue One team, mostly because I outsped them by such a huge percentage that I would hopefully just be able to take down the taunt on Baze and then just completely crush Jyn. Once I took out Jyn, it was going to be pretty easy to be able to take out these different characters one at a time, just because Jyn has her revive AoE, and if I took out a character, she would just use her AoE and revive that character pretty quick, and so I didn't want that to happen. And using like First Order, I don't know if there was necessarily a way to avoid that interaction, and I just didn't want it to turn into a protracted fight. I basically just wanted to get my hits in and run out. And the squad is relatively squishy. It's not super high gear. The mods were fine, but clearly like B-level mods, because my opponent is probably just using this team as filler so that they don't have to worry about putting really strong teams on defense behind their really strong Darth Revan team, which I get. But the good news is I still had Jedi Training Rey left, so I was able to just kind of control things, you know, stun where I needed to, get turns when I needed to, put days on people, reduce turn meter, dispel, all that kind of stuff. So that was a relatively simple counter there. And then finally I had Phoenix, and all I really had left, I could do the Phoenix mirror match, which is a miserable situation in the best of times, and I decided I'd just use First Order. I know that Phoenix at times are used as a counter for First Order, so I was a little nervous walking into this. I couldn't remember if I'd ever actually tried First Order versus Phoenix, but then I realized that this Phoenix team is not equal to a lot of the good Phoenix teams that can counter First Order. For instance, they don't have Sabine here. They don't have a high gear Kanan. They don't have any Zetas on anyone except for Ezra. And so I knew I was going to win this going into it, you know, assuming I didn't crash or something. But I wasn't really sure how I was going to approach it. Usually when I'm taking down Phoenix, I try to take down the guys who have high DPS first, just because they also tend to be the squishiest characters. And Ezra was actually one of the most resilient on the team just because of the relatively low gear levels on the rest of the Phoenix squad. And so even though I targeted Ezra first, I did just like casually take out Zeb first instead, just because of his low gear level again. And so now that Kanan is gone, the team can't counter anymore, so I can start using my AoE with Kylo. And you know, Chopper can be really frustrating to try to take down. He's actually a much better tank than a lot of people give him credit for. But, I mean, there's just no way that he's going to be able to be the difference maker here or time me out. And he didn't even dodge any. Like, that's usually the thing that makes him so annoying. So, another easy 60 banners. And I did manage to clear my opponent at over 1900 banners, which is becoming more common. 1900 as opposed to, like, 1910, which is always my goal. But after looking at my opponent's stat sheet for different Grand Arenas, I was fairly confident that they weren't going to be able to full clear me anyways. Or maybe they could, but they wouldn't maybe be able to do it super efficiently. They also had Geonosians on offense, which if they used them, I would probably get an easy 5 banners off of them just through being able to take down the protection, and they can't really heal that well unless they end up getting Brood Alpha as the very last thing that they do. So, anyways, long story short, I did manage to get the win against my opponent. They did not actually attack. They said that since I had gotten such a good score, that it wasn't really worth attacking to them, and I get that, I guess. I mean, I don't get it. I would never do that personally, but, you know, no knocks on my opponent. Certain people are into Grand Arena like me, and other people just don't really care. Like, it's a fun pastime, but, you know, trying to play, like, really high technical level Grand Arena is not everyone's cup of tea, and I respect that. So anyways, the only thing that was frustrating to me was I have not gotten any relevant teams to try to counter my Watt Nute squad. Like, every time it seems like something comes up, like someone uses Traya at like gear 13 or something and takes him out, and it's like, of course you're gonna beat him with Traya, you know. And then the next time they attack with something completely ridiculous and lose, and then, you know, clean up Nest with something else. And then the next time it's like, oh, I threw Darth Revan at Nest, and now my opponent didn't attack this time. They didn't attack last time. Like, I hope that my finals opponent at least attacks my Nest squad. That's my hope, with like a credible team, not some like overkill team. Or maybe it'll just be established at that point that you need to use Traya or higher to be able to take it out, at which point I will say that defensive team is an absolute win. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the finals match, which should be soon. I'm excited for that. And remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.